I saw a tweet the other day that said that the most important quality for a smart person to have is courage. Why is that the case? Because otherwise they are going to leverage their intellect to rationalize their fears and create the most convincing excuses they can not to act. Now, that's true, but I think that there's an important nuance as well, and that is that discernment is crucial and part of this intelligence. So let me explain. When someone is engaging in reasoning, they typically view it as justification for their actions. And here, when I say justification, I am using it in a positive connotation, as opposed to rationalization, which is negative. Now, whether that reasoning is actually justification or rationalization depends on whether the action actually serves their objective, right? And the thing is that everything is going to hinge on what exactly that objective is. And this is where it gets interesting, because the objective may differ between the person themselves and what an outside observer might think, right? But sometimes the objective is actually the same subconsciously, right? The person deep down might know what they should do, but consciously they reject it and they convince themselves that they have different goals, right? So in those cases, what feels like justification to them is actually deep down rationalization, even to themselves. They just don't want to admit it. Now, this matters because sometimes fears are justified, right? Sometimes you either shouldn't act or, let's say, should act differently. And the key is, of course, having the wisdom to know the difference between valid caution and rationalization. And the connection back to courage is that this wisdom requires courage, because without courage to override your reasoning when necessary, you can't learn to recognize when you're rationalizing versus when caution is warranted, right? If you've never overridden your reasoning to act in spite of fear, right? If you've never exhibited courage, then everything you do is going to seem as a justification because you've never actually identified the negative rationalization within yourself, right? All in all, the takeaway is that yes, it's very important to have courage, especially if you're very good at reasoning with yourself, but you should be aware of what the objective is, right? Because what you think is justified, other people might call rationalization, and it all depends on whether the thing actually serves you or not. But in order to actually make that decision properly, you need to have exhibited courage in the past to know the difference. Let's go.